So Twilio is announcing layoffs, 17% of their workforce. And unfortunately, if you're in tech, the layoffs continue. I want to look at some of the details of this. So it seems that in 2020, this is in March, they had roughly about 3,000 employees. And then as of late 2022 in September, they had about 9,000. So you can see they essentially hired quite a lot of people. So they're still above their earlier levels. And this is a quote from Twilio. So saying, for the last 15 years, we ran Twilio for growth, building a tremendous customer base, product set, and revenue base. And then they say, but environments change, and so must we. Now we have to prioritize profit far more than before. And remember, guys, if you're following the market, following stocks, this sort of things, is you're looking to buy essentially company's future profit / company's future cash flow. And this is something that essentially Wall Street wants, is to cut costs. Unfortunately, I'm sure you know, if you're an employee of said company, you don't necessarily want to lose your job, but this is sort of what's coming down the pipeline. It's happening over at Meta also. So their chief business officer is going to be leaving, and there's been rumors around the company. You can see the headlines here. Meta employees are bracing for more layoffs amid delays to finalize budgets. It's still a mess. And I remember we were seeing reports earlier before that Meta was doing what they're calling like a zero budgeting kind of thing. So basically saying that, no increase in your sort of team's budget. And basically also too, they were saying they're going to flattening out their worker chain, meaning that there's no longer just managers. You need to be coding and doing something, not just managing people. So they're just trying and looking for ways to cut costs and essentially get rid of people. Also too, just speaking of sort of conflicts and turmoil in the world, over the weekend, if you guys know, we were talking about UFOs, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I didn't think I'd ever be making those kind of videos. And this all started out with the sort of Chinese spy balloon flying over the country, and we shot it down, in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, China is saying, they come out and you read the headlines. China says U.S. balloons trespassed over 10 times since early 2022. So they're accusing the USA of spying on them. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. So if this is indeed the case, and then this would sort of lean more towards that the UFOs that we're shooting down aren't necessarily alien, but more likely to be Chinese. This is the map of sort of where they are. You guys can see that we've been shooting them. It's just been the last couple of days. It's been all over the headlines. This is coming in from the Foreign Ministry over in China, and they say, it is nothing rare for U.S. balloons to illegally enter other countries' airspace. So they're saying, USA, you fly over other countries all the time, etc. And now they say, the U.S. needs to reflect upon itself and change its wrong practice. We reserve the right to take necessary means to deal with relevant incidents. So talking about this, I think if the Chinese government starts shooting down, say, our balloons, we're going to have like a balloon warfare. And whether or not that's how you would classify this Cold War or hot war, that we're shooting down each other's balloons, who knows? But that's sort of my thinking on that right now, is that if I had to choose as aliens or from China, I would probably say the balloons are from China if I had to choose right now. Also too, there was a bit of tensions in the Philippines. And if you guys know, we have a Navy base in the Philippines, and you can see here, essentially what it was the Chinese Navy was like shooting lasers at the, not lasers like blowing up ships, but like, lights to, I guess they're trying to blind their radar or something to the Philippine ships. And then this comes sort of after the U.S. had announced that they were like sending more naval forces to Subic Bay. So keep an eye on these tensions. That certainly this matters when you have the two largest economies in the world duking it out in terms of like war words and these kind of things. However, as I showed you guys in charts before, the trade between the two countries, between U.S. and China, still remains high and is still growing, although it might have peaked. That's something that we've mentioned. Now, tomorrow is going to be a big day in terms of the markets. We're going to get an inflation read. The CPI data will come out. It's anyone's guess. I'm going to show you some projections, but it's anyone's guess. The core goods, this is a chart here, has been coming down. So we do know that costs are coming down. And if I had to guess, I would say inflation's peaked if I had to guess. The other thing though is that how fast will inflation come down? Because essentially we're watching, what's inflation doing and then what's the Fed doing. The Fed keeps saying we're going to keep, rates elevated, but they're keeping an eye on the data. If you ask sort of like what stocks are doing, Morgan Stanley, this is Mike Wilson, he goes on TV all the time. He's a bit bearish. We'll read some of the quotes of these people and see what if you guys agree or disagree. Wilson sees S&P 500 ending the year at 3,900, about 4.7 below the gauge close on Friday. So he's a bit bearish, so he doesn't think it's going to go any higher from here, that essentially this is the peak. The basic gist, and we'll read his quote here, the risk reward is as poor as it's been any time during this bear market. The reality of equities is that monetary policy remains in restrictive territory in the context of an earnings recession that has now begun in earnest. So if you understand his language, the basic gist of it is that the Fed is keeping interest rates up, and that's going to essentially pull back on earnings of companies. Right? Guys, remember, we talked about Twilio in the beginning, we talked about Meta. If you're a company, how can you make more money? One, you could increase your revenues, like for example, right? So you're going to sell more stuff. However, who's going to buy your stuff? Right? That's an honest question. And then also too, when we're raising rates, where are people going to get money to buy said stuff? So if it's hard to grow your revenues, right, then the other thing you could do would be then to cut your costs. Basically, you're trying to preserve profits to convince Wall Street that your company is a profitable company. This is a quote from Bank of America. They would say, we could remain in this bear market for a while because we're in the process of right-sizing tech and everything else getting bigger in the benchmarks. That's not going to be a great environment for the S&P 500. And the other thing too, which I know a lot of new people are into the market, these kind of things, is you're like, okay, so what's the market doing, Chris? Just tell me. Okay, so one thing I try to do my best on this channel is just give you an idea of what we're all looking at, right? Everyone's looking at the same things. And so that it's not like it's random. So some people think it's random. And I understand this. If you tune in other channels, they're just going to show you the chart, right? And they're going to say, oh, well, stocks, went down here and now they're going to go up there, and just try to keep it really, really simple. I'm just being honest with you guys. The world isn't really that simple. And I understand if we reduce everything just to one chart of your favorite stock, then it makes it seem really easy. But frankly, it's not, because there's lots of plays, lots of multiple things going on. And as I described to you, there's economic forces, be it the macro. That's why we talked about news between U.S. and China. This is why we talk about the consumers. This is why we talk about the price of housing. This is why we talk about the price of fuel. We talk about multiple things. I just want to get your mind oriented to getting used to, like, okay, this is why the markets do what they do, and this is sort of why different things move the way that they do. Now, which is really interesting, JP Morgan, they actually have you could call it bets or predictions of what CPI will do and sort of what they think the reaction will be. This is a JP Morgan's trading desk. It's actually really interesting. So we're looking for what's CPI going to be. So they say, okay, we'll start. Will the CPI be below 6%? So, inflation is really coming down. They only give that a 5% chance, 5% probability. And they'll say the S&P, if that were to happen, if, CPI comes in really, really low, we may jump up, say, 2.5 to 3%. If the CPI data comes in at between 6.0 to 6.3, which they give their highest probability at 65% probability, they think the S&P will go up 1.5 to 2%. If the CPI, it's funny how it's like really, really precise, right? if the CPI data comes in at 6.4 to 6.5, which they give a 25% probability, they think the S&P will go down 0.75 to 1.5%. And then if the CPI is above 6.5%, meaning that inflation is still hot, which they only give a 5% probability, they think the market will go down 2.5 to 3%. So they're saying 3% up or 3% down for tomorrow are the sort of range, and then more realistically, maybe 1 or 2%. So we'll keep an eye on these things. Now, in terms of sort of like, what could we expect? I'll just show you India. And the reason why is these track, other countries, because we're all buying the same fuel. We all buy food. We all use labor. We're all connected. So India, evidently, though, inflation for them, things have cooled off like other countries have as well, like USA has. However, things aren't necessarily going to go to zero. We're not going to go to zero inflation. And remember, the Fed wants 2%. I'm just giving you, for example. So it's hard to get things cooled. And one thing that's always going on as well is you got to pay people. And, once you start paying people, you can't really just cut their wages. So you just basically just fire them. So I'm just giving you guys an idea of what's going on with companies. But yeah, if inflation will be hard to control for a while. It may take some time. Over the weekend too, as well, things that did take too much time was the Super Bowl. It was a very interesting game, very fun game, big comeback by the Chiefs. There was a final call in the game that may or may not have been a holding call. If you guys are football fans, you'll have your opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. I saw the play for myself, and I understand why the ref called it, because I saw the Eagles guy, basically try to grab the other guy's waist, but didn't actually grab it. So is attempting to grab the same as grabbing? So it is what it is. And at the time, maybe that seemed like the right call. And some people said the game is fixed. So I myself, I went to Penn. I lived in Philadelphia, so I'm cheering for the Eagles. And so if I was really really into the stuff, and I do watch football, I'm not honestly, I'm just not into it that much. I'd probably be pretty pissed off, to be perfectly frank. And I'm all about just letting people play. I didn't see the guy push him down with that, but to be fair, it is what it is, and life's not always fair, unfortunately. Also, other news from the Super Bowl. If you guys are watching some of the more gossipy stuff, but this is actually legitimate news. Elon Musk was hanging out with Rupert Murdoch. Even if you know Rupert Murdoch, he's essentially a media mogul. He's behind Fox News, Wall Street Journal, Sky News, all sorts of things. And they are sitting right next to each other, not just making random stuff up. So, and this is news, and this is something that we saw before. Elon Musk was hanging out with Jared Kushner, if you know who that is. That would be Ivanka Trump's husband. So Elon is certainly courting the right side of politics, and you could call that the correct side or the right side, however you want to say it. But I'm not just making just random stuff up. So my opinion on these things has always been the same. As a CEO, you should try to stay out of that stuff. But also, to be fair, Elon is in the media business now, and maybe that's what he's maybe one day Elon's going to announce that he's going to be buying whatever, MSNBC, right? For example, you never know in this world what could happen. But that is the thing. Elon was hanging out with Rupert Murdoch. Also, too, I guess some of the other big news: Super Bowl ads. Chinese company Pinduoduo. They were advertising the Super Bowl and basically like an online shopping, what they call it, Temu US. That was an interesting one. And then another interesting ad, and I actually watched this one. I was just looking at it. Was it called like Dawn.com or something like that? Dawn Project is what it's called. They were actually promoting their sort of anti-Tesla ads and basically showing that the Tesla car would hit, a child if it was walking across the street, that kind of thing. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that one. That's a very interesting one. And we got this as well. So always like negative news on crypto stuff. I just don't know why people want to be in this. People always say, Chris, what's your opinion on this? My opinion is always the same, like, why bother take the risk? Headline, U.S. regulator orders halt to minting Binance-branded stablecoin. And it just, I just don't know why you want to be all this stuff. I don't know what to say. I mean, the U.S. government's like, stop making your own coins and stuff like that. Are you a Ponzi scheme? This kind of stuff. And there's not much else I need to say about it, other than I just wouldn't trust my money on this stuff. I think that's pretty safe to say. And overall, when we look at the markets, and we'll get a big read on CPI tomorrow, my thing is always the same. Just make sure you're secure in your career. Hang out with this channel. We have a great community of people to sort of like talk about where we think things are going. Don't throw all your eggs in one basket. It's just always good advice, because right now this market is tough to read. My particular opinion is a little bit more bearish. I just feel like we essentially had quantitative easing. We were printing money for quite a long time. And, inflation got out of control, all this money printing. And essentially we got to be, as someone has referred to it, you could call it the money shredder or the money burning, right? We got to figure out, okay, we need to get money out of the supply and start raising rates and start to slow things down a bit, because it is a real thing, right? You can run an economy too hot. And I understand it's fun for the markets going up forever, but, you get inflation, which is a real thing. And unfortunately, inflation hurts the people at the bottom of the spectrum most. I'm talking about the economic spectrum. And, I try my best to give you guys an education and build a great community. So thanks again for watching, everyone. And this has been your daily news.